everyone, this is Jennifer Atenito here from FAU. I'm sorry I couldn't be in the meeting today, but I figured I would record this presentation for you to explain a little bit about the analysis we've been working on for the task force and for Al. And this is pretty brief, so hopefully I won't lose your attention. We were asked to look at the costs and benefits of the Addiction Stabilization Unit, and I worked with Jimena Levy from the College of Medicine on this. And I will explain the analysis as I go. The background, this is all information that you guys probably know at this point, but it was determined by the National Safety Council that the odds of dying from opioid overdose is 1 in 92, and that we have exceeded the odds of dying from a motor vehicle crash. Another analysis, this is a national analysis, found that about 1% of hospital expenditures are now going to treating people for overdoses in the emergency department, and that about 24% of people who are admitted to an emergency department across the nation are readmitted in a 30-day period of time. And links are below for those. You'll recognize this slide from a previous Overdose to Action presentation done. I don't know if it was the last meeting or the one before that, but they were examining hospital admissions data. And they found that 13% of ER visits for opioid overdoses resulted in readmissions. And I remember discussion when they presented that we were all kind of a little surprised by that number. And of course, they're continuing to examine the data, and we'll see what evolves there. Also from the same presentation, again, this is hospital admission data, they found that out of 8,245 records, 654 records were from JFK North, which is where the ASU is. So these are figures that we are entering into our analysis. And the analysis that we conducted is considered to be a probability analysis. It's a decision-making model, and it's using partially real data and partially aggregate data and assumptions. So I'll explain that. So the research question that Al asked us to explore is if only about 8%, the 654 out of 8,254 out of 8% of OD transports went to ASU in 2020, and the reported concern by Palm Beach County Fire Rescue is the cost of transport from Southern Palm Beach County, does ASU remain a cost-effective OD response approach? I hope I got that research question right. And the parameters that we entered into the analysis using the dates from January 2020 to February 2021. Again, we took a look actually at data since February 2021, and it's not dramatically different, so that period of time was reasonable to use. The costs were the actual figure of transport that was provided by Palm Beach County Fire Rescue to Al and then to me. And so that was the cost to transport someone to an emergency department, very sort of average figure. And then the benefits are effectiveness. And in this case, we looked at deaths averted. Readmissions were also figured into the analysis, but in this particular outcome, the main outcome that we were examining was deaths averted. And again, we entered a number of assumptions, which I'll explain. So here are some of the aggregate data that was entered, provided by Palm Beach County Fire Rescue. They transported about 2,000 people approximately for opioid-related overdoses. The cost to transport that was provided was $3,562 for an individual transport. So what we did for transporting specifically to ASU or for the length of the county, we doubled the figure. That's pretty much what we did. We decided that the most conservative approach would be to double that figure. The probability of being transported more than once for non-ASU emergency department was 13%. And again, this was an assumption that we drew from the OD to Action presentation. And we dropped that by 2 points for transporting to ASU. Again, a very conservative figure. We would hope that we were avoiding even more readmissions than just the 2 points, but we decided to be conservative. And I'm sorry, my face is covering up this number right here, but the overdose deaths for 2020 provided by the Florida ME's office was 622 for Palm Beach County. And here's the decision tree that we arrived at. Again, this is a probability model. This is how a decision-making model, but not necessarily using hard raw data. So if you look at the left-hand side, you'll see the two choices are transport to ASU or transport to another emergency department. And the green line is the line that is determined to be the most effective approach. And you can see here the figure that was derived was $6,922.58 for 210.76 lives saved. I'll explain a little more about what that means. As you move to the right, you'll see all the different possibilities that could happen that we entered in as a result of these two choices. Being discharged without a recurrence, being discharged with a recurrence, the possibility of delivering Narcan on site, or the patient expiring after a readmission, all of that. So if you go all the way to the right, you'll see the outcomes of all of these different possibilities. The outcomes of all of these possibilities are actually what leads back to the left and gives us our final number for transporting to ASU. So the main takeaways from that analysis, again, it's very sort of rudimentary probability analysis, are that, so I told you the costs that we entered into the model. These are the costs that came out of the model. Transporting to another area emergency department was determined to come at a cost of $3,457.60, and the cost of transporting to ASU being $6,922.58. These figures are not very different from the ones that we put into the model. So the difference in cost being $3,464.98. The effectiveness is lives saved or deaths averted. Transporting to another emergency department, 195.37 deaths averted, and transporting to ASU, 210.77 deaths averted. So the increased effectiveness is 15 additional lives saved, and the increased cost is $15 for each of those lives saved. Seems like not a bad deal to me. Okay, so what does all of this mean? Based on, again, this kind of basic analysis that we did, enough lives could be saved using very, very conservative parameters in a year period that transporting to ASU could be deemed the more effective approach. Each additional death averted by ASU transport costs about $15. And that's the cost that the decision makers would need to use to decide if they were willing to pay that amount for each life saved. We also did what we call a one-way sensitivity analysis that shows us what our threshold would be for this model to still be considered effective. And so we were only looking at OD reoccurrences for this sensitivity model. And if OD reoccurrence was a threshold of 8%, so if 8% of people who were transported to ASU were readmitted, this would still be considered the more effective approach. The cost differential could still be considered by Palm Beach County Fire Rescue to be too excessive, in which case, if that's the problem, then we would, of course, recommend that a Southern ASU be developed. So that's what we have so far. We are working with OD to Action on finalizing our data use agreement, and hopefully we will continue to be able to report more findings as we go forward. So feel free to get in touch with me if you have any questions, and enjoy the rest of your meeting.